associations have raised concern over the sustainability of bus and car travel in Southampton. We'll be looking at environmental, social and economic issues related with bus travel, and we'll try to clarify any outstanding doubts concerned with bus travel.
Transport is one of the few industrial sectors where emissions are still growing and contend sustainable development. Ultimately, to reduce our emissions, the number of vehicles needs to be reduced. The Southampton Local Transport Plan focuses on buses, aiming to increase usage by 50% over the next 20 years, reversing the national trend of decline. But how environmentally sustainable are buses in comparison to cars? A typical diesel car emits about 11 times more CO2 than a standard bus per passenger, and collectively in Southampton consumes about 13 times more fuel than buses. But considering entire life cycle emissions, it's been shown that urban diesel off-peak buses release higher NOx and SOx per passenger kilometre travelled than a typical gasoline car. Therefore, substituting bus for car travel can increase exhaust emissions if passenger load factors are insufficiently high. But suggestions have been made for price differentiation between peak travel periods for public transport to incorporate these social costs. Southampton City Council has just received a grant of about £600,000 by the Department of Transport in the last few months to upgrade 37 buses, and if the oldest fleets were upgraded, emissions could be halved. Southampton is attempting to relieve congestion following recent UK success in bus traffic reduction. The main roads are primarily radial routes, with buses prioritised in the city centre, reducing air pollution build-up. However, despite these developments, traffic flow in the city has not significantly increased in the last 10 years, despite volume remaining static over the last 5. So how does the Council's bus strategy had any effect on relieving congestion at all? Overall, it's calculated with a typical 2-storey bus holding 75 passengers and projected population growth of about 600 a year in Southampton, we would need less than 8 extra buses or an extra 600 cars a year. The sustainability of buses is not due to environmental concerns, it stems from social preferences. There are also several social advantages for increasing bus services. The whole UK is confronted with an ageing population, and the number of older people in Southampton greater than 65 years of age has already reached 30,000. Older people rely more heavily on public transport, especially the bus sector, for local travel. The concessional travel scheme enables older residents and those with specific disabilities to take advantage of free travel on buses. Bus Users UK also works to give bus passengers a voice, but there are still some barriers that need to be removed. The graph illustrates the present bus services don't satisfy customers completely. Many services on the less commercial routes have experienced a cutback, and in some cases have been withdrawn completely. Public transport networks have also largely failed to adapt to new land use patterns and irregular working hours. To solve problems, higher levels of priority are required, such as road space reallocation, more frequent services, real-time passenger information, and prepaid ticketing. Some have already been carried out and have proven to lead to greater customer satisfaction in the service. Comparing running costs of a bus and car, we can see which is more economically viable for the consumer. Running costs for a typical urban bus accumulate to about £120,000 a year, broken down to fuel consumption, labour, maintenance, insurance and other overheads. National average pay for a driver is £19,000 per annum, 2 drivers needed per bus per day. Regarding conventional car travel for a year, excluding the initial purchase costs, breaks down to insurance, MOT, maintenance and servicing and tax. The difference here is that these costs burden the consumer directly, compared to bus operating costs diluted across company income. Using bus transport annually totals to about £350 using Unilink and Blue Star services in Southampton, car running costs amounting to an average of £2,600. By taking 75 passengers per bus and considering 1 passenger per car, 75 cars would total to about £200,000 in running costs. Therefore, on average, cars cost 66% more to run than a single Southampton urban bus. In context of the economy, 30% of public bus services in Hampshire are paid for by Hampshire County Council, costing £6.7 million per annum. They're not commercially viable but fulfil a social need. The remaining are operated by commercial bus companies. Therefore, although economically viable for the consumer in travelling by bus, it's imposing a drain on local council funds. Since 2012, bus passenger numbers have fallen by 2.5% in Southampton. Efforts are being made to increase use of public bus transport through restrictive parking standards and increasing public transport provision during peak periods. Generally, improvements in service quality and time savings are valued for increasing usage of interurban buses. Considering over half of us would only travel by bus if there was no other alternative and services were improved, it seems very unlikely. The preference for convenience overrules bus for car transport, but those without access to a car have been found to prefer walking or cycling. Therefore, should we instead encourage more active travel? Despite the ability of buses to achieve a range of social, economic and environmental objectives, to decarbonise the transport sector, technological solutions may be needed, assuming society preferences and perceptions will not change.
are both environmentally and economically sustainable, providing cost load factors are sufficiently high, which can vary throughout the day. The main issues limiting water use are the social inconveniences, which need to be overcome for greater acceptance.